The cameras were already rolling when Arnold Schwarzenegger walked onto the set of The View. He carried the kind of presence that didn't need an introduction iron in the shoulders, gravel in the voice, a lifetime of reinventions carved into the lines of his face. The audience rose to their feet with cheers, some for the action hero, some for the former governor, some simply because he was Arnold. He waved, flashed the familiar half-grin, shook hands around the crescent table before taking his seat directly across from Joy Behar. Joy had her cards in a perfect little stack. She didn't look nervous. Joy rarely did. But there was a twitch in her smile that said she was braced for something combustible. Arnold was there to promote his new documentary about second chances, re-entry programs for formerly incarcerated people, climate resilience projects, and everyday heroes who rebuilt their lives with grit and humility. It was a subject he was passionate about, one he'd spent years funding quietly, one he cared about because, even though his life looked like a highlight reel, he knew what it was to start from nothing and claw for meaning. The first few minutes were cordial. Whoopi asked him about redemption and cynicism. Sonny Hostin asked about how policy could meet personal responsibility. Sarah N. joked about his gym schedule. Arnold answered warmly, disarming, self-aware. He told a short story about a man named Hector he'd met in East LA, who learned to weld in prison and now supervised a team of young men who reminded him of himself hungry, proud, and tired of being told they'd never be more than their mistakes. That was when Joy leaned forward. "So Arnold," she said, voice smooth, unblinking, "you talk a lot about second chances. But isn't it convenient for men like you, powerful men too? Talk about forgiveness after you've had your own scandals?" The room tightened. Even the air seemed to listen more closely. Arnold's jaw shifted almost imperceptibly. He had answered questions like this before, but never in a space that felt this pointed, this personal. He took a breath. "I've made mistakes," he said simply. "Public ones, private ones. I have apologized, and I continue to apologize to the people directly affected." Joy pressed. "But do you think talking about second chances is a way to clean your image? Control the narrative? Isn't this image rehab?" A murmur rippled through the audience. Some agreed. Some didn't, but everyone leaned in. Something flashed behind Arnold's eyes. Not anger, frustration, not defensiveness, fatigue. He was trying to say something bigger than himself. And yet somehow it had been reduced back to him. "This isn't about me," he said, voice quieter now but edged. "This is about people who will never get a platform like this. It's about men and women who go back to their neighborhoods and are told they'll only be defined by their worst day. If you want to talk about my failures, I will own them. But don't pretend this documentary is a vanity project. I've been doing this work for years. Long after the press stopped caring." Joy didn't break. "Yes, but the question is, why now? Why this film? Why this press tour?" "Because they asked me," he snapped, before he could stop himself. "Because the stories matter. Because if people in your audience who make up their mind based on what you and your colleagues say don't hear this, they'll never know what redemption actually looks like. Because people in prison don't get press tours, Joy." Silence. She blinked, sat back, and for the first time in the interview, lost her rhythm. "Well," she said sharply, "we're just asking questions, Arnold. That's our job." He stared back. The muscle in his cheek twitched. "And my job is to not let the conversation be hijacked by cynicism." A producer waved frantically behind the cameras. Go to commercial. Go to commercial, but Whoopi had already signaled she wanted to let this breathe. There was something alive here, something uncomfortable, yes, but human. Joy doubled down, but softer. "I'm not cynical. I'm cautious. I believe in accountability. I've seen too many powerful men use philanthropy like perfume. And I've seen too many commentators," Arnold shot back, the accent thickening with emotion, "use their platform to burn good work because they don't like the face on the poster." The audience gasped. Whoopi looked over, eyebrows high. Sarah's hand hovered near Arnold's shoulder as if to say, "You good?" But no one touched him. Arnold stood up, slowly, intentionally. He took the mic wire out of his jacket pocket and laid it neatly on the table. "Get the microphone off me," he said. Not a demand, a declaration. Arnold. Whoopi began. "I came here to talk about Hector, about Tamika, about a firefighter who lost his brother to fentanyl and is now building a halfway house with his bare hands. And I have nothing more to say if this is going to be another game of gotcha." He turned to Joy, eyes soft now, exhausted. "I don't care if you like me. I care if you listen." Then he walked off. The audience didn't clap. No one knew whether to. The cameras cut to commercial. Hosts stared at each other. Joy's hands shook just for a second. Whoopi exhaled and said quietly, "Okay, we'll be back." Backstage, in the dim corridor near the emergency exit, Arnold stood alone, palms pressed to his thighs, trying to regulate his breathing. He'd been through wars, the political kind, the emotional kind, even the literal kind, when he visited troops overseas. But this scraped on a bruise that never healed. The one that said no matter what you do, it will never be enough for some people. He didn't walk away because he couldn't handle the questions. He walked away because he didn't want to waste the stories he came to tell on a conversation that made it about him. An intern rounded the corner and nearly ran into him. She was maybe 22. Big glasses. Clipboard. Frazzled. Seeing him, she froze. "Mr. Schwarzenegger, I'm so sorry. I know you okay?" He looked at her. The anger in him softened into something else. "I'm fine," he said gently. "What's your name?" Leela, he said, nodding slowly. "You did nothing wrong." She looked like she might cry. "My brother just got out of prison. I wanted to thank you for the movie. He watched the trailer last week and said it was the first time he didn't feel like garbage since he came home." Arnold closed his eyes. He took a breath. He opened them again, and they were wet. "Thank you for telling me that." Whoopi found him 5 minutes later, walking along the loading dock, hands in his pockets, staring at cracks in the cement like they were constellations. She stood beside him, no words for a moment, then, "You don't have to go back out there," he smiled. "I know. Joy is Joy. She's been burned by a lot of people. She cuts before she gets cut." "I know," he said again. "Ain't me. I overreacted. I made it personal." Whoopi laughed lightly. "It was personal." He turned. "I know, but the work isn't." She nodded. "If you want to come back, I'll make sure you talk about Hector. Tamika, no interruptions." He shook his head. "I'll go back. But not to talk. To listen." "What?" "I don't want to fight cynicism with another speech. I want to sit down with her not on TV and talk like people. Then I'll come back." Whoopi stared at him for a long time, and in that look was gratitude, surprise, respect. "You're a stubborn man, Arnold." His eyes twinkled, just a little. "I built a career on it." They did the rest of the show without him. The internet exploded with half-formed conclusions, amateur psychologists, and professional trolls. Clips of Arnold peeling off his mic circulated in slow motion across Twitter. Headlines screamed, "Schwarzenegger storms off," "Joy Behar shuts down Arnold," "The View meltdown," and more nuanced ones. When good intentions and hard questions collide. But the story didn't end in the feeds. At 6 p.m. that evening, before Joy left the studio, she got a text from an unknown number. It was 2 words, "Dinner." She stared at it, then typed back, "Only if you pay." "Jay," he replied with a thumbs-up emoji. They chose an old Italian restaurant on the Upper West Side that Joy loved. Checked tablecloths. Got pasta made in the back by a grandmother who refused to retire. Waiters who'd seen it all and judged no one. Arnold arrived first, in a dark jacket, hair a little messy now. Joy arrived second, in her signature glasses and a blue scarf. They sat. They didn't order right away. "I crossed a line," Joy said first. "I did too," Arnold answered just as quickly. "You walked out?" "I had to. Or I would have said something I regretted." She nodded, looking down. "I wasn't trying to, well, maybe I was. I don't like when famous men talk about charity like it's penance." "I don't either," he said. "That's not what this is. And if you watched the film, you'd know that." She looked up, cheeks coloring. "I did. This morning. Twice." He blinked. "You did?" "Yes. I watched it because I wanted to understand before you came on. That's why I know you're serious. Which is why I pushed harder. I know the subject matters to you. And sometimes, when things matter a lot, people use them to hide. And sometimes," he replied, "they use cynicism to hide." They stared at each other across the table, and one of the waiters, reading the energy perfectly, brought bread. They ate. It grounded them. Joy sighed. "When I was younger, I thought skepticism made me smart. Somewhere along the way, it just made me tired and mean. Arnold's eyes softened. When I was younger, I thought accomplishments made me invincible. Somewhere along the way, they just made me lonely. They both laughed. It wasn't loud, but it was real. For 2 hours, they talked about redemption, about media, about responsibility, about Lila's brother, about a man Arnold had visited last winter who made sculptures out of scrap metal to pay for his daughter's asthma medication. They disagreed.
Agreed.
I listened. At the end of the night, Joy reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the letter from Hector, the welder, which the production team had sent her as background. She had brought it with her. "This is the part I didn't let you read," she said, sliding it across the table. "You should have read it on the show." Arnold unfolded it. It was short. "Governor, I don't know if you'll remember me. You shook my hand at the re-entry center and said, 'You're not your record. I've been trying to believe you ever since. This documentary made my daughter believe you for me. That's a miracle. Thank you.'" Hector Arnold's mouth trembled. He covered it with his hand. Sometimes people cried with noise. He cried with stillness, breath held, eyes red, voice a whisper. "Thank you for showing me this. Come back," Joy said. "Tell the story. I'll shut up. Or I'll just do the jokes. You do the heart." "I'll come back," he said, "but you'll tell a story too. About your father. About why you don't trust powerful men. Let them see why the cynic is also human." She smiled, softer than the lighting in that restaurant. Deal. A week later, Arnold Schwarzenegger returned to The View. The clip of him storming off had amassed millions of views. The teaser of his return had more. When the cameras turned on, there was a shift in the room, not just of tension, but of expectation. Something was about to happen that daytime television rarely offered anymore. Grace. Whoopi introduced him with a grin. "He's back. We're not letting him leave until he eats a niche." Laughter, relief. Arnold sat down. Joy did too. No cards, no cues. Just a people who had the courage to show their rough edges on air. "Before we begin," Joy said, "I want to say something." She took a breath. I was hard on Arnold. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I've been burned. I'm not apologizing for asking hard questions, but I am apologizing for not trusting the heart behind the answers. Arnold nodded. I want to say I walked off because I was frustrated. But I also walked off because I was afraid I would make it worse. That's on me. Whoopi looked into the camera. "Okay, America, this is what grown-ups look like." They talked about Hector, about Lila's brother, about how many people leave prison with nothing but a plastic bag and their name on a parole sheet, and how one job can save a life. The audience cried. Not because it was sad.
Ow!
Because it was human. And then Joy did something rare. She shared a story she'd never told on air before, about a relative who'd gone to prison when she was a kid, how the family never talked about him again, how it felt like a death in slow motion, of a person still breathing, but erased from the photo albums. "That's why I push so hard," she said, "because I don't trust the people who say they'll fix it. But I'm learning to trust the people who actually show up." After the show, the internet did what it does: cut, splice, meme, applaud, condemn. But beneath the noise, the letters poured in again, from former inmates, from mothers, from counselors, from men who had built things with their hands, and women who had stitched hope out of whatever thread they had left. One came from Hector's daughter, Mr. Schwarzenegger. "I watched you on The View. Thank you for saying my dad's name on TV. We never thought anyone would. We watched together and he was so proud. It made me brave enough to apply to nursing school. I got in. Thank you, Lena." Arnold kept that letter in his wallet, folded 8 times. Joy kept Hector's letter in her desk drawer at the studio, and sometimes, when the day was hard and her patience was thin, she took it out and read the line he wrote to her in a postscript after the show aired. "Ms. Behar, thank you for being tough on him. Thank you for being tough on yourself. It's how people get better." Months later, at a quiet event in a San Pedro community center, Arnold stood on a small stage, with no teleprompter and no cameras. Lila was there with her brother, who had just started a welding apprenticeship with Hector's team. Joy wasn't on the stage, but she sat in the back row, ball cap pulled down, glasses low, just listening. Watching what talk had turned into, what outrage had softened into, what second chances had grown into. Arnold told no stories about himself that night. He didn't need to. Duh. They were everywhere in the room, shaking hands, laughing, building futures with rough palms and careful hearts. When he finished, he walked off the stage, and Joy stood, clapping softly. He saw her and mouthed, "Thank you." She mouthed back, "For what?" "For listening," he replied. She nodded. Then, with that same little twitch of a smile she had on the first day, she mouthed, "For coming back." They stood there for a moment, a loudmouth and a machine. Two people who'd been larger than life, and now were just life-sized, flawed, humbled better. The kind of better you can't brand, yet the kind of better that's built. Breath by breath, choice by choice, in quiet rooms where nobody's scoring points. Somewhere a boy welded a seam so clean it looked like a signature. Somewhere a woman got a call that her scholarship had been approved. Somewhere a host thought twice before turning pain into a punchline. Somewhere a man who once walked out of a studio chose to walk back in. And the world, in small ways and invisible ones, got kinder. Not because it learned to stop asking hard questions, but because it learned how to sit in the answers without lighting them on fire. The headlines would always say he exploded and stormed off. But the truth, the part that never went viral, was that he returned and he listened. And so did she.